Former President Donald Trump's announcement of a new 25% tariff on imported cars and auto parts has triggered a rapid series of factory shutdowns, mass layoffs, and surging vehicle prices. As the ripple effects spread across the economy, many Americans are left wondering, how much longer will they bear the cost? Just days after Donald Trump unveiled the 25% tariff on April 18, 2025, Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, suspended operations at several plants and announced large-scale layoffs. In the U.S., 900 workers were laid off. In Canada, the Windsor plant, which builds the Chrysler Pacifica and Voyager, cut 4,500 jobs. In Mexico, the Toluca facility, responsible for the Jeep Compass and Dodge Journey, shed 2,500 positions. In total, nearly 7,000 jobs were lost across North America within just 72 hours of the tariff decision, according to Bloomberg, April 20th, 2025. The financial impact is just as severe. Stellantis alone could face up to $41.9 billion in additional production costs. Flagship models like the Chrysler Pacifica, once starting at $38,000, may see price increases of $3,000 to $5,000, driven by part shortages and rising input costs. For American consumers, especially middle-class families, the spike in prices following job losses creates a dual crisis. One Michigan worker told Reuters, April 19, 2025, "We get the idea of bringing jobs back, but now we can't even afford the cars anymore." Once praised for its cost-efficient cross-border production system, Stellantis now finds that same structure breaking under pressure. Ram engines built in Mexico can no longer reach Michigan. Jeep is short on Canadian chips. Steel and transmission prices are surging, leaving Dodge struggling to maintain production. At the Sterling Heights plant in Michigan, Ram 1500 assembly lines have halted entirely. Across the U.S., dealerships from California to Texas are reporting empty showrooms. A Dallas-based dealer told CNBC, April 20th, 2025, that customers now wait at least 6 weeks for delivery, often paying $1,500 to $2,000 more due to shortages. Budget-friendly models like the Jeep Compass, once priced under $30,000, are now either delayed or out of stock. Auto forums on Reddit are filled with frustration. There are no more cheap American cars, just expensive ones we can't get. The idea of relocating auto production entirely back to the U.S., long championed by Donald Trump, now faces harsh economic reality. According to Financial Times, April 21, 2025, U.S. labor costs are double those in Mexico, and building new factories could take 3 to 5 years and billions in infrastructure investment. Should Stellantis fully localize its operations, vehicle prices could rise by $4,000 to $6,000 per unit due to increased labor, materials, and logistics costs. With inflation and interest rates still elevated, American consumers, particularly middle-income groups like farmers and construction workers, stand to lose the most. Stellantis is attempting a hybrid survival strategy, accelerating U.S.-assembled electric and hybrid vehicles such as the Jeep Wagoneer SEV, Dodge Charger EV, and Ram Hybrid, while negotiating with domestic suppliers to reduce reliance on imports. Yet analysts warn that even these made-in-USA models are unlikely to return to pre-tariff pricing. As a result, many Americans now face a double blow: lost jobs and lost access to the affordable vehicles that once symbolized U.S. auto industry strength. The U.S. auto industry faces a major disruption. Over 7 million imported vehicles could be hit with a 25% tariff, potentially driving prices up by thousands of dollars. How are General Motors and Ford responding? And what will this mean for American consumers? In 2024, the U.S. imported 7.38 million vehicles, mostly from Canada and Mexico. A proposed 25% import tariff could increase the price of each car by approximately $3,000, according to Barclays. General Motors, whose foreign production accounts for more than one-third of its U.S. market supply, would be among the hardest hit. The company says it can absorb 30 to 50% of the increased costs in the short term and has announced a $59 to $60 billion investment to expand domestic production. Still, GM's stock fell 8% after a lukewarm response to the tariff announcement. Meanwhile, Ford CEO Jim Farley took a stronger stance, warning that the tariff would create chaos and disrupt the entire U.S. auto industry. For American consumers, this means higher car prices, fewer model choices, and increased risk of supply chain disruption. GM executives recently met with President Donald Trump and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to express concern over volatile trade policies. CEO Mary Barra reaffirmed GM's $60 billion commitment to U.S.-based production, but stressed the need for long-term clarity on tariffs and emission standards to support strategic planning. Ongoing tariffs on steel and aluminum currently impact over $150 billion in product value across the industry. Without clear federal guidance, manufacturers may delay investment, weakening their competitive edge. The potential consequences include job instability and higher car prices for American buyers. Mexico remains a crucial manufacturing hub for General Motors, thanks to low labor costs and high efficiency. In 2024 alone, GM produced over 700,000 vehicles in Mexico, including 99,529 electric vehicles, representing nearly 60% of the country's total EV output. The automaker operates 4 major plants in cities such as Ramos Arizpe, Silao, San Luis Potosí, and Toluca, manufacturing key models like the Silverado and Equinox. But if the 25% import tariff takes effect, GM may be forced to shift production back to the U.S., a move that would drive up costs and cause delays. As a result, American consumers may face limited model availability, higher prices, and slower delivery timelines at dealerships. As GM continues its pledge to phase out gasoline vehicles by 2035, it now faces a dual challenge: ramping up U.S. production while investing heavily in its electric vehicle transition. The company warns that unless tariff-related disruptions are addressed, it could lose market share both domestically and abroad. With shrinking profit margins, prolonged instability could erode efficiency and competitiveness. For American consumers, this means potentially higher car prices, fewer available models, and extended wait times for new deliveries. Trade tensions between the United States and China are escalating significantly, with a series of countermeasures emerging from Beijing. The question now arises, what will China do next to navigate and potentially reshape the global trade landscape? During the early phase of the U.S.-China trade war, 2018 to 2019, when the Trump administration imposed a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, Beijing expressed strong dissatisfaction. However, as the tariff rate rose to 34%, the language shifted to firm opposition. At the height of tensions, when the United States threatened an additional 50% tariff in response to China's retaliatory measures, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce escalated its tone, no longer limited to stating firm opposition. The ministry described the move as a mistake on top of a mistake, and even used terminology equivalent to extortion, a term rarely employed in official discourse. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, 2024, China has implemented a wide range of large-scale retaliatory measures. At the peak of the tensions, China imposed tariffs as high as 84% on a variety of U.S. imports, including energy products, agricultural goods, and consumer items. In addition, China introduced export restrictions on strategic minerals, among them rare earth elements, which are essential for both technological applications and national defense. A notable example is the TikTok negotiations. After the U.S. government requested that control of TikTok's American operations be transferred to domestic investors, China initially appeared to be in agreement. However, according to the New York Times, April 2025, as trade tensions escalated, Beijing unexpectedly withdrew from the arrangement, leading to a deadlock. According to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute, 2024, China continues to maintain a significant trade surplus and holds one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, valued at over 1.2 trillion US dollars. In response to the United States raising cumulative tariffs on Chinese goods to 100% within a few months, 2024 to 2025, the Chinese government introduced a direct support package aimed at stabilizing financial markets, as reported by Reuters. Specifically, the People's Bank of China, PBOC, injected credit into enterprises operating in sectors affected by the tariffs. State-owned funds purchased listed shares to curb the sharp decline in the stock market. As a result, China's financial market, which had experienced a steep drop in early April 2025, stabilized and showed modest recovery in the following sessions. China is actively engaging in international forums to promote its image as a stable economic partner that refrains from interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, while upholding the principles of equality, multipolarity, and mutually beneficial cooperation. According to the South China Morning Post, at the Munich Security Conference in February 2025, China's representatives delivered a four-point message: ensure equal treatment among nations, adhere to international law, promote multilateralism, encourage openness, and the sharing of economic benefits. In addition, China is leveraging its stance of non-conditionality, not linking cooperation to human rights, environmental commitments, or institutional reforms, to appeal to developing countries. These nations often face large capital needs, but may be reluctant to accept pressure from Western powers. China is using soft power and its economic strengths to develop a global network of partners, with a strong emphasis on pragmatism and long-term commitment. However, developments in the South China Sea and the Taiwan issue may influence the level of trust China aims to foster on the world stage. The U.S.-China trade dispute has entered one of its most volatile phases, marked by tit-for-tat tariffs, tighter controls on rare earth exports, and growing uncertainty in global supply chains. As economic strategies sharpen on both sides, questions arise over who holds the stronger position in this unfolding standoff. A. On April 9th, President Donald Trump announced a new 125% tariff on Chinese imports. According to a senior White House official, this figure ADDs to a previously imposed 20% tariff targeting products linked to the opioid fentanyl, bringing the total effective tariff rate to 145%. The decision followed China's move to impose an 84% tariff on American goods, another sign of intensifying friction between the world's two largest economies. In response, Beijing swiftly announced it would impose a 125% tariff on all U.S. origin goods entering China, effective April 12th. On April 4th, 2025, China formally lodged a complaint with the World Trade Organization, WTO, challenging the U.S. decision to impose an additional 34% tariff on Chinese products, bringing the total rate to approximately 54%. China argues that the U.S. measures violate WTO rules and is urging a rollback of the new tariffs. Under WTO procedures, both parties are expected to enter a 60-day consultation period. Should these discussions fail, China may request the involvement of the WTO's dispute settlement body. Beijing has reiterated its intention to take firm and proportionate steps to safeguard its lawful rights and interests. Chinese authorities emphasize that no party truly benefits from a trade war and called on the U.S. to lift unilateral tariffs and pursue solutions through mutual respect rather than pressure. In a concurrent move, China announced new export controls on 7 critical rare earth elements: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium, and yttrium. These materials are essential in advanced manufacturing sectors, including electric vehicles, defense systems, and consumer electronics. China currently accounts for around 90% of global rare earth production and processing. In light of the new restrictions, several countries and multinational firms have begun seeking alternative sources and investing in non-Chinese rare earth supply chains. At present, the U.S. produces about 12% of the world's rare earth output, primarily from the Mountain Pass mine in California. However, due to limited domestic processing capacity, nearly 2/3 of this output is still sent to China for refinement. To reduce reliance on foreign processing, the U.S. government has launched several key investment initiatives. MP Materials is building a processing facility at Mountain Pass, aimed at supplying rare earth magnets to General Motors by year-end. Lynas Rare Earths received $258 million from the U.S. Department of Defense to construct a rare earth refinery in Texas, though the project has faced delays over wastewater management issues. VASI, a German company, secured nearly $100 million from the U.S. government to establish a rare earth magnet manufacturing site in South Carolina. Despite these efforts, several challenges persist. High costs. Building a rare earth facility in the U.S. can cost 3 times as much as in China. Environmental regulations. Stringent permitting and environmental rules have delayed multiple projects. Skilled labor shortage. A lack of domestic expertise in rare earth processing has driven demand for specialized training and international recruitment. Tensions between the United States and Germany are rising over tariffs and U.S. bonds, adding uncertainty to global financial markets. Europe's move toward greater strategic autonomy and the potential repatriation of gold reserves may reshape the global economic landscape. German Economy Minister Robert Habeck expressed concern about how the U.S. calculates tariffs, especially in the pharmaceutical sector. He emphasized the need for both countries to consider mutual impacts when applying trade measures. Germany is one of the world's top pharmaceutical exporters, accounting for about 14 to 15% of global pharmaceutical exports in 2024, according to Eurostat. U.S. demand for European pharmaceuticals continues to grow, with average annual imports increasing around 6% from 2020 to 2024, according to Bloomberg. Recent U.S. bond auctions have seen lower participation, raising concerns that foreign investors, including those in Europe and Asia, may slow down purchases or reduce their holdings. Reports suggest Germany is considering moving 1,200 tons of gold, valued at approximately $124 billion, from the Federal Reserve in New York back to Germany. If carried out, the move would aim to strengthen national control over reserves amid global instability. Under President Biden, the U.S. economy and stock markets have shown stable growth, with some indexes reaching strong annual gains, Bloomberg Financial Times. In contrast, during Trump's term, U.S. market performance often lagged behind economies like Japan, Canada, the UK, Germany, and China. Biden has focused on rebuilding multilateral alliances, particularly NATO and ties with Europe, to support global stability. In contrast, the Trump administration took a different foreign policy approach, shifting traditional partnerships and cooperation strategies. Minister Habeck and other EU leaders stressed the importance of unity in external trade talks, urging member states to avoid individual country negotiations in order to protect the EU's long-term interests. The EU is expanding trade relations with major partners such as South Korea, Japan, India, and Indonesia, aiming to diversify markets and reduce dependence on any single economy. It is also considering joining the CPTPP trade pact as part of its broader global strategy. European leaders are prioritizing reduced reliance on external partners in key areas like defense and economic security. CDU leader Friedrich Merz highlighted the need for greater autonomy and the ability to respond to challenges independently and proactively.